السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أهلا بكم في برنامج نيوكاسل مع وليد في هذه الحلقة الخاصة من الإعلامي والمتميز الصحفي رئيس صحيفة الكرونيكل، الصحيفة الرياضية الأولى في نيوكاسل، ريدر. لاسس ريدر. Welcome, Mr. Lee.
How are you doing? You okay?
I'm great. What about you?
Yeah, not bad. Just catching my breath after a long season, but
and resting your hand.
Yeah, just calming down a little bit from the season. So it's been a long one, but a very enjoyable one, you know.
طبعا عندنا الحين عديد من الأسئلة استقبلناها، كل الأسئلة إن شاء الله اللي تبون نسألها لمستر لي بنسألها. طبعا ما عدا سؤال واحد، رفضت سؤال واحد يسألني يقول لي عن أرثر ميلو. تركت العالم كله ورحت لأرثر ميلو. All right, so let's start the shooting. But before going to the question, I want to know more about this game. What I hear that you are the man of the match with 2 shots on target.
Well, I'll take that. Although somewhat, Pete Graves did score 2 goals in the game as well. So sadly, we couldn't win the game. But this year we didn't have a goalkeeper, so that didn't help us. And yeah, we were hoping to do a little bit better in the next game we play.
Who surprised you? Who played very well from among the journalists?
Who surprised me? Let's have a think about that. I mean, Pete Graves is obviously a player who scores goals and has done in the past from the journalists. So he's probably one of the better players, I would say. But yeah, there's quite a couple of good young lads playing as well, who did quite well. And you know, the game in itself was meant to be just a bit of fun at the end of the season, so we don't take it too seriously. We leave all the football to Eddie in the team. But yeah, it was just a shame that free kick didn't go in there. I
wish there is a video for it.
Yeah, it was curling. It was on target and it got scooped away at the last minute. So never mind.
Hopefully you will win next game or next season. Mr. Lee, we'll start with the first question. A lot of asking. I have many questions about Saint-Maximin. So yes, wondering, is he leaving? Is he staying? We noticed the message here in France. I tried to translate it, and pardon my French, he said something about that was posted at last day of season. Never forget who was present when no one else was. Time passes, memories fade, feeling change, people leaves us, but the heart never forgets, making history. What's your take on the situation of Maxi? Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's obviously some people might have looked at that as a goodbye, but we see a couple of days later here with the Newcastle shirt on, training, getting ready, all ready for next season. I think there's a good chance he could stay because obviously the squad needs to be bigger next season. He's going to get more opportunities to play. And I think last season he had a few problems with injuries. So I think for me, a player I would definitely keep. But then if he gets an offer, if his agent can drum up some interest, and let's say AC Milan, who were interested in him last winter, if AC Milan came back, you know, he could be tempted. He could be tempted to go somewhere else where he's going to be sort of the main man. For me, he's a very good player, but you look at the way the team played this season when he didn't play, and they've proved they can survive without him. But for me, I would definitely keep him because I think he is a fantastic player. and he does love the club. But look, this is a stage of his career now where he might get another option. You know, he might get an AC Milan or maybe somewhere in Spain that could tempt him away. And Eddie Howe himself said in the press conference after Chelsea that it's up to Maxi now, so he will dictate his future. So I couldn't sit here and say he's definitely going to stay, and I definitely think there will be some interest in him from other clubs. It's whether that interest tempts him away in the next few weeks and months.
Depend on Maxi. What's that exactly referring to? Depend on Maxi.
Well, it sounds like Eddie Howe has told him he wants him to stay. And he might have turned around and said, well, I will stay if I'm guaranteed a game. And Eddie Howe might have said, I can't do that. So it's up to you to fight for your place. So it's whether he's prepared to fight for that place. But, you know, without being able to put those questions to Alan himself, it is a little bit unclear at the moment. But a talented player like him is always going to get interest. AC Milan were definitely interested last January. So whether they come back, we'll have to wait and see.
This is a great question from Al-Amir, which means the Prince. He said, if you get exclusive information, Mr. Lee, are you publish it quickly or you hide it until a specific time?
Well, there's certainly a saying in journalism that never sit on a story, because if you wait, someone else might get the same information and go first. So if I get something exclusive, then I tend to use it quite quickly. But sometimes we need to double check and check again, because sometimes the information might be from a certain point of view. So if we know it's right and it's good to go, we go as quick as we can. Brilliant.
Bruno, we hear that he's gonna sign, and if you remember, Mr. Lee, here in the middle of the season, he put something, he and his agent, some smiley face on Twitter. Do you recall that tweet? And we back then we thought it's something about recontract or increasing the salary, but now we hear that there will be renew the contract with better features and more money every week. And we also hear the situation of Barcelona, Real Madrid. This never in talk. So what's the latest on Bruno?
Well, Bruno has been in contract negotiations with Newcastle for some time now with his agent. That's been stood up from sort of his agents and his sort of entourage. Then yesterday we did see the Barcelona and the Liverpool stuff. There's been no official comment from Newcastle on that at the moment. That's not unusual this time of year because the season's just finished. People are just trying to have a couple of days of calm, I think. So that was interesting, but we know Real Madrid in the past have been interested. We know Juventus have been interested. So Barcelona and Liverpool. But look, he's under contract at Newcastle for another few years. So Newcastle are in a very strong position with him. They can demand what they want, I would imagine, unless there's any hidden clauses that we don't know about. But I would say they're in a position where they can demand what they want. And for Bruno, he wanted to play Champions League, and we've given him Champions League. So I think he's happy enough here, and I think he would sign a new contract. But we've seen it before in the past. When Newcastle get to a certain level, it's all well and good, but there's always going to be a bigger club. I mean, I'll throw one example from a few years back was Jonathan Woodgate. We signed him from Leeds, and he was very good for us. He was brilliant. And then Real Madrid put a bid in for him, and it's impossible to turn down Real Madrid if they come knocking on the door because of who they are. And Newcastle aren't obviously at Real Madrid's level just yet. So it's one where you would think he would stay, but look, Dan Ashworth himself has said when he's done interviews that they can't guarantee they can keep everybody. And if a bigger club comes calling, then that would leave everyone with a difficult decision.
But if he have signed already contract, why to improve the contract? To keep him stay? Of course.
Yeah, just to keep him interested, I would guess. I mean, obviously he signed a new deal. He's been a brilliant player. He's had a great season. But you want to keep your top players happy. Bruno's the type of player who can attract other players as well. So it's important that I think Newcastle do revisit deals a lot. Callum Wilson's someone they revisited. If a player's doing well, they will go back and sit down and talk about terms just to protect the club. So, yeah, it's not a case of just leaving him on what he's on. They are protected to an extent, but they want to just keep the best players happy. So, and he's certainly one of them.
Willock, Mr. Lee, is he gonna sign recontract or?
Another player who's got quite a long contract already, but again, they could revisit it because he's had such a good season. And he, you know, when Joe Willock first arrived and he got 7 goals in 7 games under Steve Bruce, everyone thought we've got a great player on our hands here, but I think he's improved. I was lucky enough to do an interview with him last season, and I asked him about could he ever get 7 goals in 7 games again, and he said, "Look, I'm a better player than that now. I've come on leaps and bounds. He's got more attributes than just the goals." And I think this season in midfield he's been fantastic, and he's even been talked about as possible England call-up. So it's going well for him. So I wouldn't be surprised if he got a new contract at some stage.
Brilliant, Mr. Lee. Let's short this question into Leicester City. Barnes, Maddison. Latest, please, Mr. Lee.
Yeah, so Leicester are going to definitely be selling those 2 players. Maddison, Newcastle have already bid for him in the last 12 months, and that deal didn't get accepted. Harvey Barnes is another one who they've been interested in the past. Didn't quite get as far as a bid. So both players are on Newcastle's list of targets. But with Maddison, you specifically asked about him. We do know Arsenal, Tottenham, and Liverpool as well have been linked with him in the past. So there's 3 clubs already that would make it a competition to get his signature. And I think for Newcastle, it would be a really good signing because I think he's at the right time of his career now. But if he doesn't come in this window and he goes somewhere else, then I would say that would be his last chance, because Newcastle after this will hope to move on to bigger sort of names, if you like, because they are moving on with the finances as we go through here.
The rumors that he want to come to Newcastle and he said something to Trippier and Wilson. Is any truth in that?
I think he's been in England camps with Wilson and Trippier and Nick Pope as well. And players talk, and they will have told him how good it is at Newcastle. So I think there's every chance that he would be interested in Newcastle. I mean, there's obviously 3 parts of it. It's whether the player wants to come. It's whether Newcastle offer the right price, which I think they did last time. And then it's down to what the wage demands are for a player. So if he ends up asking for something that's outside Newcastle's pay structure, then that might make the deal difficult. So it's one that Newcastle are certainly looking at, but I think there's a number of other players that are on that list.
Mr. Lee, regarding the left wing, that we have already we have Almiron and he have good season.
Yeah.
And we have Jordan. Sometimes he play in his position, and we connected to Barnes as we speak, and Diaby before. So what do you think will happen in the left wing? Sorry, in the right wing I mean, the right wing.
I think they've got options. I mean, Almiron can play on either side as well. And I think Gordon is quite versatile, and really Joe Linton as well can play in that position
Yes.
on either side. So they've got a lot of options there. But if you go back to, I always, when we're talking about this, my mind always goes back to the Kevin Keegan times, where Kevin Keegan said, look, you can't have too many good players. You know, there's no such thing as having too many. And I think Newcastle will look to add quality. Eddie, in his press conferences, has spoken about having two 11s, two different teams to play. Obviously, would mix it up a bit, but you know, you could have a team in the Champions League playing 6 or 7 one night in the Champions League, and then on the Sunday, you know, freshen up with 4 or 5 changes as well. So I think there's no limit to having too many good players, and just because we've got those 3 options you mentioned doesn't mean that that they wouldn't go and bring in another wide winger or a forward. So I think there's certainly a few more on the list that they could look at as well. But yeah, I don't think that would stop them adding to the ranks in that position.
Who do you think the target number 1 on the left, on the right winger?
I think, to be totally honest, if you look at previous windows, there's been like 3 or 4 options. So let's go back to last August when they bid for Maddison. They were in for Harvey Barnes, was another option. They were actually in for Anthony Gordon last August. So there's 3 players there, and they ended up bringing in Alexander Isak. So he was the one who came in. So all the time, there'll always be 3 or 4 options, possibilities that they could bring in. So we've mentioned a couple of them there. I'm sure there's a few more on the list. And I think really Eddie Howe, he's not going to be short of players now because the transfer budget is there. Yes, they've got the financial fair play, but I certainly think there's a few options.
So I understand, correct me please if I'm wrong. So Isaac and Gordon, we already have them. So do you mean that maybe we are not focused on the right winger?
No, sorry. What I mean was in the last summer window, we were linked with Gordon, Barnes, Maddison, and we ended up with Isaac. In January, we were linked with Maddison again. We ended up with Gordon. So this time we're linked with Maddison and Barnes, but there's always going to be another possibility. So it's just a case of watch this space, really.
Brilliant, Mr. Lee. This name is these 2 names exactly. They are everywhere. I think I already asked some journalist from France, and she said something about that this is just agent talk, just to make a sale. Sublai and Thuram.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Zoblai. Yeah. Zomblai, I think is the pronunciation. Zomblai. Okay. I've got some Hungarian friends, so I should be practicing this a bit more. But
Zomblai.
Yeah, my friends in Hungary say that this guy is the business. He is going to be a top player. Already is a top player, so he's going to have lots of options. And I know Newcastle are interested in this guy. He's got a €70 million release clause, and I think he's looking for about £190,000 a week wages, which is a big wage. He would be one of the top earners at Newcastle. So to just come in and be the top earner, wow, that's some arrival. So whether Newcastle think he's worthy of that, we'll have to wait and see. But look, he's done very well in Germany. He's the Hungarian captain of the national team, and he is meant to be the business. That's what I've been told. So he would be a great signing.
And then Newcastle interested in him.
From what I believe, they've had a look at him. They've looked at a lot of players, but certainly he's a player. I know one of the scouts spends a lot of time in Germany, so he will have come across this player on many occasions, but it looks like there is other interest in him as well.
Thuram needs a player.
Yeah, I think Alan Saint-Maximin is close to this player, and he said that he'd had chats with him about possibly coming to Newcastle. So it was one that was put to Eddie Howe in the press conference.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
remember that one? And Eddie Howe,
easy Maxi.
Yeah, basically. And I think we were actually in Saudi Arabia when Saint-Maximin did that interview. It was in Saudi Arabia, and we sat down with him at the team hotel, and he mentioned Thuram. And look, all I'm saying is that Eddie Howe had the chance to say this isn't happening, and he didn't. He had a bit of a laugh and joke about it. So that said to me that there could be some interest in this player. So that'll be an exciting one if they could get him.
Okay, so I get that. So now maybe we have some news about, for example, Zumblai and Thuram, but we'll end up with Madison, and the opposite, vice versa. So, do you think Zumblai and Madison play in the same position, so we can't have them both?
I think if they both become available, then there's a chance you could end up with a couple of good players, but then we're going to see other players leave the club, so that's a certainty because that always happens every summer. So I think there's going to be a lot of reshaping of the squad, and then if a big signing comes in, then that might put a question mark over somebody else in the squad. So I think it's going to be a very exciting summer.
Okay, Ward, Browse, Scott McTominay. So we want to talk about defense midfielder. We hear that there maybe some talk with him. So what you can tell us about those two? And also Romano just said in 1 hour something about that Newcastle still interested.
Yeah, I mean he's been linked. We'll start with Ward-Prowse.
Okay.
Ward-Prowse, he's a player Newcastle have obviously admired. A lot of Premier League clubs admire him. It's one where if he became available and the deal was right, then I'm sure there's a possibility. But I think he's going to have a lot of interest. So I wouldn't definitely say no on Ward-Prowse, but I think as things stand at the moment, was very early in the window. They are looking at other options, so we'll have to wait and see on that one. McTominay, again linked heavily, but it would all have to be everything would all have to be right. It's Man United would have to be willing to sell as well, but certainly one. I think Eddie Howe on the record said, I can't remember exactly what his words were, but he said that there was nothing close. I think must have been in January, that one. So an interesting one not a rule out.
I have a friend in the know who's a Manchester fan. His name is Jimmy, and he said that Sir Ferguson, he's the reason why he's still in Manchester. This player, he like him a lot.
Yeah, I mean he's still got Sir Alex Ferguson still has a lot of influence at Man United, and we've seen it in the build up to the cup final, going for meals with Ten Hag and things like that. Steve McLaren, who's ex-Newcastle manager, is a Man United still. He's still very close with Ferguson, so the link is very much there. So that will be a big factor for McTominay. But look, for me personally, I think there's other players in the background.
The budget, Mr. Lee, always asking. The budget is 100. Tomorrow 200. It's like the guessing game. So, what you heavily hear or have a search about it, about this budget? How much you think? I know we can spend a lot. I know that, but regarding fair play, you have to balance the book. We know that, but do you think there is a specific number Newcastle owners doesn't want to exceed?
I think if you look at the fact we're going to be getting a new sponsor soon, the Premier League prize money, the Champions League prize money, there's a lot of money going in the pot. So financial fair play, we're going to be able to have a competitive budget. So that's not to say we're going to go out and spend silly money, because you just cannot do it because of the FFP. But I think they will be able to maximize what they have. And if the right deals come along, great. If not, there's always January. The next window is never too far away. So for me, I think they spent 250 million so far. I don't know. It's hard to put a prediction on it, as you say. But I definitely think they look at even the players we've mentioned there. If they sign two of them, let's say they sign the Hungarian captain and Madison, you're already talking about 130, 140 million pound for two players. So that is how much it's going to cost in the next window. So who knows? They could quite easily be 200. Quite easily be close to 200 million. If I was absolutely pushed, if you're pushing me, I would say they could spend 200 million, but we'll have to wait and see.
Brilliant. How we can get the players if we still fixed on the weekly wages, not exceed 150? This is going to be weak point. All the clubs, okay, we can make this player not going to Newcastle, just offer more weekly wages.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good point, especially now you're moving in the Champions League. So Newcastle really have punched above their weight in the Premier League this season, because they haven't got that huge wage bill. So that's why you've got players like Bruno in talks on a new contract, because other clubs are going to be able to offer him that wage. So you've got to look at that. I think the Champions League clubs, I mean, look, Barcelona are trying to get Messi back. He's on like £1 million a month or something like that. So we're not going to be able to compete with that. I know Barcelona have got lots of things going on, so we can't get too deeply into that. But that's the top end of the scale. A Messi or an Mbappe, they're on serious money. And we're going to be competing with these teams in the same competition next year. So it's going to be very difficult. And getting to the Champions League is one thing. Staying in the Champions League is another thing. And then getting back in it again next year, it's going to be even harder, because you're going to have Chelsea are going to be back, Tottenham are going to be back, Liverpool are going to be back. Arsenal are going to be up there fighting again. Man United, Man City, Aston Villa, Brighton. It's going to be so intense. So it's really becoming one of the most exciting Premier Leagues we've ever seen in this country. And the good thing is Newcastle are part of it. We're not. It's not like years gone by we've been relegated or anything like that. We are going to be right in the mix. So exciting time ahead. But as you say, the wages are going to be a big factor now.
Left back situation.
Yeah. Wow. What can you say about Dan Burn? Amazing season. Probably never thought he was going to be left back. But you've got to take your hat off to him. He's had a great season. Matt Targett couldn't get in the team even after injury. Jamal Lewis couldn't get anywhere near it. Paul Dummett didn't play a single minute of football in the Premier League. So that shows you the competition that's already there. But one of the players you've flashed up on there, Kieran Tierney at Arsenal, he's the next sort of elite level player you could possibly see. At Newcastle, we'll have to wait and see. But look, I spoke to some people close. I did a story on it, I think it was Saturday. Some people at the Arsenal end, and they said, look, he's certainly one Newcastle are interested in, but it's a little bit too early for these type of stories. The window doesn't open for another 2 weeks, but certainly he could be one they look at.
Brilliant. Karius or any new goalkeeper coming?
Well, Karius, his contract runs out soon. You've got Karl Darlow still here. Dubravka is thinking about his future, so he could still possibly leave. Gillespie's contract runs out as well. Obviously, Nick Pope is the undisputed number one. So it's about bringing in, if let's say Dubravka does go, then they are going to need someone who's going to push Pope. I mean, Darlow could probably do that role if he wanted it, but at his age now, not that he's not as old as me, put it that way, but he's someone who might want to go and play first team football every week somewhere else. He was at Hull. I think he enjoyed playing every week, so he could do that. But he could equally, be. I don't like saying the word number two, but he could be someone who pushes Pope if he wanted to. Don't know. Karius seems to want to go to Italy, so that could be a possible one for him. But yeah, I'm certainly getting the feeling that there could be another goalkeeper coming in. But at the minute, again, it is a little bit early because we need to see what happens with others. But look, Nick Pope's number one, but is he going to be able to play 60 games next season? I find that hard to believe. You've got to give your keepers a rest at some point, so it's going to be interesting. I mean, I have seen Fraser Forster. He was linked with Newcastle, but I did check that one out, and I think he's happy where he is at Spurs, but he's a Newcastle fan. And he was here when he was a kid. So I think if that possibility did come up for him, then I'm sure he would possibly be interested in it. And he is a fantastic goalkeeper as well. So that's maybe one to keep an eye on long term.
Brilliant, Mr. Lee. Last question. Who will win, you think? Champions League
final.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I would love to see Man City win it. And I think they are the better of the two teams. So I would say Man City will win it. And, Man City are a club that they're a bit like Newcastle in a way because they've had some hard years. Obviously, not in the last 10, 15 years because they've got a lot of money. But before that, I went down to Man City when they played at their old stadium, Main Road. And they've risen. They've been played in the third division and things like that, getting crowds of 30,000 playing against York and Gillingham and teams like that. And for them to be in a Champions League final I know they've been in one already, but for them to possibly be winning the Champions League is brilliant for their fans. And I think it's one of the clubs where you just wish them all the best in the final.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
كان معنا الصحفي الكبير لريدر بأخبار حصرية كثيرة راح نكتبها إن شاء الله في تويتر وراح نناقشها برضو اليوم في التيك توك. نتمنى إن شاء الله أن الحلقة عجبتكم. نراكم إن شاء الله في حلقة جديدة من نيوكاسل مع وليد. Away the lads.